Maui Nui is on a mission to help balance axis deer populations for the good of our environment, communities, and food systems on the island of Maui. They've shared over 126,000 pounds of nutrient-dense protein with the Maui community. Secure your spot now. Become a snack subscriber and join in helping to build more resilient food and ecosystems on Maui. Visit MauiNuiVenison.com. That's MAUI venison.com and use promo code BEAR for 20% off your first order. You know what my favorite text is? A waypoint in the onX Hunt app to a goblin turkey. The list on the onX Hunt app features for chasing turkeys is long, but knowing exact public and private boundaries and land ownership details will help you find more places to hunt, whether that's on public or private. I'll be toting the Hunt app through the spring woods in a few states this year, and I recommend you do the same if you want more turkeys on your table. Also, onX has a special offer for you. Use code BEARGREASE to receive 20% off your membership at onxmaps.com/hunt this spring.
There's nothing like snook hook sets at dawn or catching a tarpon in the moonlight. Find your next fishing trip made easy on fishingbooker.com and experience the magic of the Sunshine State or any other destination on your fishing bucket list. Book a blue water adventure in search of sailfish or go snapper fishing with the kids. With over 6,000 captains and trips to choose from, planning your next one just got a whole lot easier. Download the Fishing Booker app on the Google Play or App Store or visit them online at fishingbooker.com to book your trip today.
My name is Clay Newcomb, and this is a production of the Bear Grease podcast called the Bear Grease Render, where we render down, dive deeper, and look behind the scenes of the actual Bear Grease podcast. Presented by FHF Gear, American-made, purpose-built hunting and fishing gear that's designed to be as rugged as the places we explore.
I'm a little disappointed with... I was listening to the podcast, and the ad came on for the dog, the company that makes the collars.
Right, yeah.
And I feel like Jed's been loyal enough that he shouldn't get a bad rap on a commercial.
Jed?
Clay?
Yeah. Did
Jed? My coon dog that's not very good.
Oh, did I
Did
say
you
that?
say
Yes.
that about poor Jed?
Oh, man.
Yeah.
God, that breaks
Hey.
my heart.
He
Jed
deserves
don't
an
listen.
apology.
Jed doesn't listen.
Jed
you
is
sure?
kind of a bad boy, but
Yeah, if all of a sudden, like somehow when I'm in my office alone recording the podcast ads, that seemed completely fair.
Might have been late at night.
Now-
and he hadn't treed or
Now it seems really wrong.
Jed is getting
Jed-
really old.
Jed has been, when I see Jed walking through my yard, who's now like fully retired, he's just a yard dog. He has
true.
reverted, Brent,
From
to
what?
wearing out a rabbit race.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, he runs rabbits all the time. He loves
Well, that's
it.
good.
But I've
trees rabbits.
given Jed a bad rap. Jed has literally been on hundreds of coon tracks. And I took him 3 times after Fern died, and he ran backtrack 3 times, and so I gave up on him. I mean, it's probably not
So
fair
whose
what
problem
I've
is this
done.
is what I want to know.
Yeah, probably.
Jedi.
I have been on literally thousands of trees, and I didn't tree one of them either. So I like Jed.
Have you ever
Yeah.
Have you ever treed a rabbit?
Nope.
Well, I thank you for bringing that up, Josh.
I was just, it hurts me a little bit for Jed.
Yeah, you know what? Jed helped me early back in the bear hunting magazine days.
Yeah.
You know,
I remember
there's-
he had a spot
yeah.
right up there on the desk.
Jed would jump up on the desk.
That was Alexa's favorite.
Yeah,
Everything.
yeah.
Yeah, he was he's quite the hound.
He's a character. You know, Jed, he doesn't have the strength he used to, but he doesn't know it. And Tim is a little more athletic than Jed and can get across a yard pretty fast. And when Jed sees it, you can see in his eyes, he's like, yeah, let's go. And then he tries to do it, and it just moves really slow. So whenever I go on walks, the dogs always come with me. And we couldn't let Jed come with us because he, who knows where he'd go or how long
Right.
he'd be gone. But He moves pretty slow.
I can identify with that. I think your brain you still can run with the fast dog.
He's not getting slower. He's getting smarter.
We've got a great crew here today. To my right, Josh Landbridge, Spillmaker.
I'm glad to be here.
To Josh's right, Dr. Misty Newcomb.
Hello,
Great to have you.
Good to be here.
To Misty's right, Bear John Newcomb, who has something in his hand that we're going to talk about here in a minute.
Yep.
All right, we got a mystery guest. Skipping over the mystery guest, Brent Reeves.
Hey, buddy.
Great to hear
Brent
you.
Landbridge
You know, Brent,
Reeves.
I hear almost every day that people tell me they still think you're an undercover game warden.
Really?
Almost daily.
Really? I'm
Yeah.
retired, man. I'm out to pasture.
You know what a great play that would be, though.
Yeah.
I would
no
work.
doubt.
That is the ultimate undercover assignment.
Like a 15
You're going to
year.
work 32 years and 7 months,
Yep.
and then we're going to tell everybody you retired.
And
I'm
then,
like,
And then
I'm
he
like
can
that
work
guy in the
30 more
mountains.
years.
I'm like that guy in the mountains living by himself, and the government sends a helicopter. We got to have you back.
like
Yeah,
Rambo.
I was about
Like
to say,
Rambo.
I actually feel like I've
Rambo,
seen this movie
First Blood
before.
Part 2, Colonel Troutman goes back to the penitentiary, gets Rambo out after that
To the
crazy
where?
night up
Yeah.
in Oregon. You know
it's
what I'm
always
talking
up
about?
in the Northwest.
Yeah. And then they call him out to go back into Vietnam to get those POWs.
Yeah, I'd go.
It's kind of like your movie.
I'd go. But
Okay.
I wouldn't come out just to get you.
Our mystery guest,
Or
our
would
mystery
I?
guest is Kyle Carroll.
Yeah.
Kyle, awesome to have you, man. Came all the way from Northwest Missouri.
North of the river. Good to be here
Okay.
on a great Arkansas spring day.
It was a
Yeah,
great
man.
day.
Yeah.
So I intentionally have held off like talking to Kyle before he got here. When the first time I was on Meat Eater, Steve Ranella wouldn't talk to me before I came. I was there like a little early, and I was just like, "What a jerk!" And then I realized it's a podcast strategy, and other
Okay.
podcasts that I've been on, people have done that. They've not wanted to talk to you beforehand. So Kyle came in, and I was like, "Oh, sorry, I can't talk to you."
But Brent, understand this. If you're on time, you're late.
Exactly.
If you're on
I
time, you're
know.
late. So,
Thank you.
so I was
I know.
like 5 minutes early. I did send a text. Don't shoot. I'm coming in.
yeah. Now, listen, y'all probably don't know this. Do you see this?
Oh, I know it.
This painting right here of Tecumseh. I put that on my Instagram a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
This is what medium is that, Kyle?
Well, the original was an oil painting.
An
Yeah,
oil painting.
Oil painting. Yeah, oil on, I think it was on linen, maybe oil on canvas. I'm not sure, but yeah.
So Kyle is an artist, a distinguished artist, which we're very interested in. This is going to surprise you. He's a retired game warden in Missouri.
I didn't know that.
So you
Which
got
I
That
didn't
part.
know
Yeah.
that those two things could exist in the same person.
two game wardens in a room, kind of, sort of.
Yeah. This is Sting.
Or
Wait a second.
is there?
Wait a second.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how long have you been doing
Well,
art?
That, I started actually out of when I went to college as an art major. And
Whoa.
and I had to decide the first year.
Like a lot of art majors, law enforcement or art.
Yeah.
They want to paint you or want to hook you up. No, it was just, I didn't really know for sure I didn't know how to get in the business. I knew that I kind of wanted to work like for Missouri Conservation Department, and I knew they had one artist. So I'm thinking, how's that going to work, And then about the same time I was interested in applying for the game warden position. I was either going to be in Wyoming or Missouri because I was working in Wyoming in the summers. And so that freshman year, they decided that you had to have a full college degree to apply in Missouri to apply as a game warden.
Okay.
So
Got it.
I went ahead and switched to biology as a major. And so I never really left it, but I didn't start doing anything professionally or really seriously till about 99 or 2000.
So you were always
25
just a
years.
good artist, just naturally.
Well, yeah. I mean, my mom kind of encouraged it, and I drew stuff to entertain my brothers and sisters, on paper, and then I'd turn the paper like this. So it was moving pictures,
Nice.
So
What kind of stuff did you draw when you were a kid? Like if your notebook was out in front of you during class, what would you
probably
draw?
two things. It's either wildlife or there were bombs going off, like bombs,
Yeah. So where did you get this image of Tecumseh? Because you painted it, but were you looking at an image?
That's interesting that you asked that, because I was asked to do that for a project that was put together by David Wright, a good friend of mine in Tennessee. And really, probably the reason I'm in any kind of artist today is his mentorship. But he was working on that gun in the painting is actually a gun that's in the Museum of the Fur Trade that has can be traced back to Tecumseh.
Oh, really?
And so they had a group that went out and they actually let them photograph it, take it apart, and they made an exact replica. And then when that story was going to be in the magazine, they wanted a cover piece for it. So no, there are no picture. Well, from your research, there's really no picture of Tecumseh. So that's a compilation of just what we know, that by the time he was prominent, the tattoos had kind of gone away because whites weren't tattooed. So the Indians were, prior to that, pretty tattooed. So it's just sort of what we know, what we think.
Now, we did have a couple of legitimate portrait artists that painted him.
Yes.
And so I guess you had seen those.
I had seen those, and I used some of what matched up with what I'd read and so forth. The ostrich plume was something that they had done before.
That always throws me off.
Yeah.
You kind of have this romantic idea of Native Americans wearing a feathered headband, but you think of a native bird.
Right.
And then Tecumseh
ostrich.
has this huge ostrich plume.
Yeah.
It's just interesting.
Yeah.
Because that's what they said he wore.
I read it somewhere, yeah.
Yes, absolutely. He was described. Back in those days, they didn't have video. They didn't have photography. Right. So writers wrote about what they saw to report back as journalism, and they would describe what Tecumseh looked like when he met with these U.S. military generals and British guys, and he would often have this big white ostrich plume in his
Well, that's the original went to a collector in Ohio, pretty close to where Tecumseh was from. And
How big was the original painting?
I don't remember. It's a little bit bigger than that. That's probably 9 by 12-ish, I think, what we did to prints. But it was a little bit bigger, but I don't remember.
But it wasn't. A big.
No.
Yeah, okay. I thought maybe it'd be a big one.
Maybe 12 by 16.
You've been taking some heat for that.
Straight up, man.
It's the beep that you just heard was not a burrito going off. It was not a Garmin. It was not a burrito in a microwave. It's a battery pack for my computer. Somebody wrote me a very long, thoughtful email this week about how they thought it was my laptop, and they were worried that my laptop was going to die. And so I'm working on that. Actually, every time that beeps during a render, we're going to give away
a burrito,
$30,000 to Misty's favorite conservation organization. That's a joke.
One benefit of not being able to hear real well out of my left ear is I don't hear it.
You don't hear the beep?
I did not hear the beep. So
okay, it was loud.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, or I was gonna ask you, what's your favorite? Like, do you have a bunch of art? I mean, like you've done a lot of this kind of painting.
Yeah.
What's some of your favorite stuff you've done?
I use what I like, at least, and I'm not talking so much about what I do, but what I like, which is end up what I do. Some of is something that's historically accurate that portrays frontier people, whether it's natives or us or whatever, in a historical setting. So you get you can use your imagination, but you can see this nice, beautiful historic setting with a historic scene in it that's accurate. Or if you're just doing figures, I like to make sure that the accoutrements and the gun and everything's right for the time. And so it's a little harder to do historic art than it is just to do a portrait. Because you do a portrait, you do that with something historical, you still have to do the art well, but then you have to do some research. But that's the fun part, because it comes out of stuff that we read.
Yeah,
like what you read.
The detail in this is unbelievable.
The latest one that you did that I saw on your Instagram, that mutual surprise.
Oh, that's a new one. Yeah.
Now, what was that one?
It's a guy. It's a dude in a canoe, a trapper, I guess, and he's sculling down next to the edge of the bank, and all of a sudden you see him. He's kind of taken aback, and there's a bear standing up looking at him.
Oh, nice!
In the fog,
and they're looking at one another.
Is that one you just kind of created out of your own mind?
Yeah, that's not from any. That's not from like a reference or anything. That's just I had some good reference that I shot with a buddy in Tennessee that had made the dugout canoe and stuff, and so then I just put all that together. So sometimes you just make it up for fun. It's just I just posted it. It's a fairly recent posting. So
yeah.
I got to see it. Yeah. So, were you ever? So you did some art for the Missouri Department of.
Actually, I never did work for them as an artist. There might have been something in a magazine I can't remember in the past, but all the time I spent there was as an agent, as a conservation officer.
Yeah. I want to come back to that. I want to come back to your game warden stuff. Bear, what do you got there in your hand?
This is the rough outline of a self bow that I'm making. An Osage self bow. So right now I'm probably like 5 hours into this one. I've got the limbs to where they can bend and kind of just like the general shape of the bow. I don't have it quite though to where it's...
Tell us what a self bow is. So someone who doesn't just knows that archery means something that shoots an arrow.
Yep. So self bow would pretty much just be like a one piece traditional bow that would be like carved out of a stave or like a log. So like it wouldn't be stacked wood like a lot of traditional bows.
A lot of
one piece of wood.
Wooden bows are laminated wood. Like most recurves you would buy in the commercial market are multiple pieces of laminated wood. A self bow is made from one piece of wood.
Yep.
That's it.
Yep. And so I split like an Osage log. And
that
then
we cut off our place here.
Yep. That's been sitting for a few years, and then just pretty much cut, the outline of this bow. And yeah, it takes a while. It's pretty hard work. But
are you using a draw knife?
How is that that dry? How is it to draw? Because it looks like it'd be hard.
Yeah, it definitely is. Because Osage is real tough, and the draw knife I have isn't very sharp. It's kind of old, but
especially now.
Yeah. But yeah,
Osage wood it's really interesting. Where we live in Western Arkansas, we're really on the ecotone, which is the transition zone between the eastern deciduous forest and the Great Plains. And the Osage orange is kind of a plains type tree. And so a lot of times people are really surprised that we have Osage orange, Bodark.
Yeah, I didn't realize
in this region.
That was a plains tree.
And even 2 hours away, 2 hours south of here, you might $30,000 to Misty Newcomb's conservation.
Beagles for everyone.
Even 2 hours south of here, there's not very many Osage orange. You get east of here very far, and there's not many. And so Osage orange is a wild wood. When you cut it with a chainsaw, it almost the wood chips almost glow. They're bright orange, and as the wood is exposed to the sunlight, it darkens, and it ends up darkening into kind of this like deep, robust orange. But right now, it's almost yellow.
Yeah, I was going to say yellow is how I would describe it.
Yeah, right now it is, but and unfortunately, it doesn't keep that color. But Bear's getting into some primitive archery, and a self bow is the most primitive methodology of making a bow. There's no more primitive way. So
yeah, you won't find one of those where I live.
A Bodark?
Just 2.5 hours from here.
Yeah.
And it's closer than that in a straight line.
Yeah.
Bear's going primitive, so he's making a self bow until we get an atlatl season, and then he's going full on atlatl.
Yeah. Well,
he's gonna look like that dude. What was that guy's name you did the podcast on? Had the hair like Crystal Gale.
What
was his name?
Who are we talking about?
Yeah.
The guy the had the long hair.
I met the guy?
No, you did a podcast about him.
Oh, Louis Wetzel?
Yeah, Louis Wetzel.
Oh, sure, yeah.
That's where Bear's going.
Bear's going.
Yeah.
No, wait a minute. Louis Wetzel was a pretty notorious
psychopath.
Come on now.
like war criminal.
I'm not saying anything like that.
We're just trying to figure out what you are saying.
Well, he's a good lad.
I thought it had something to do with atlatls.
No.
Okay.
He's just going to be going through the woods and taking control.
Man, when Bear was a little boy, he would gather up, all sorts of stuff, anything he could find, wood, rocks, pieces of metal, and he would make stuff out of it. And I always thought he was going to be an engineer.
Hey, that reminds me of that meme on the internet. Y'all have all seen it. The meme on the internet of John Daly
Arkansas sun.
Yeah.
Standing there in like a pair of like pink golf pants, smoking a cigarette. And then there's this like really prestigious looking golf guy looking at him, and it always
That's
says,
Tiger Woods.
Yeah, is it Tiger Woods?
Yeah.
And it says,
Slightly more famous.
what my parents thought they wanted me to become and what I became. And the best one I've ever seen is it's John Daly, and they've cropped a coonskin hat on him. He's holding a bag of corn and a bow. And then it said, what my parents wanted me to become, what I became. That's kind of like what you're saying here. You thought Bear would be an engineer.
Yeah, I did. I thought, man,
He still might be an engineer.
He still might.
He's engineering that bow.
That's right.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm pretty happy with how Bear's turned out. I'm good.
Well, he's not done yet.
Yeah.
He's just a kid.
Yeah. I don't think he's headed towards engineering, though.
Nope. So, Kyle,
Nope.
You know, whenever I look at pictures of my kids from the past or even just from a few months ago, I'm so amazed at how fast they're growing up. And then it hits me hard. I'm getting older too. That's why planning for my family's financial security has become a top priority. Making sure we're prepared and have enough life insurance in case something unexpected happens and I'm out of the picture. It's crucial. And Fabric by Gerber Life makes it simple to get the protection that's right for your family. Having life insurance gives me and my family confidence in the future if something wild was to happen to me, and I view it as part of being a responsible adult. Fabric by Gerber Life was designed by parents for parents to help you get a high-quality, surprisingly affordable term life insurance policy in less than 10 minutes. You could go from start to covered in less than 10 minutes with no health exam required. Join the thousands of parents who trust Fabric to protect their family. Apply today in just minutes at meetfabric.com/bear. That's meet, M-E-E-T, fabric.com/bear, B-E-A-R. Policies issued by Western Southern Life Assurance Company. Not available in certain states. Prices subject to underwriting and health questions. Ready to win Mother's Day and cement your reputation as the best gift giver in the family? Give the moms in your life an Aura digital picture frame preloaded with decades of family photos. She'll love looking back on these memories and seeing what you're up to today. Even better, with unlimited storage and an easy-to-use app, you can keep updating mom's frame with new photos, so it's the gift that keeps on giving. And this is not a joke. Juju Newcomb has an Aura frame, and we share photos, and they're incredible. Also, my mother-in-law has one. We have them. They truly are really good, really high quality. The Aura frame is easy to set up. It takes just 2 minutes to set up a frame using the Aura app. It also adjusts the display depending on light levels in the room to maintain the true color of your photos. For real, the digital screen is amazing. Right now, Aura has a great deal for Mother's Day. Listeners can save on the perfect gift by visiting auraframes.com to get $30 off plus free shipping on their best-selling frame when you use code BEAR, B-E-A-R, BEAR. That's auraframes.com. Use code BEAR at checkout to save. Terms and conditions apply. I've had a Helix Sleep mattress for over 2 years, and it is for sure the nicest mattress that I've ever slept on. I've slept much better in the last 2 years, been more comfortable than I have for my whole life. And that's true. The Helix lineup offers 20 unique mattresses, including the award-winning Luxe Collection, the newly released Helix Elite Collection, a mattress designed for big and tall sleepers, and even a mattress made just for kids. Take the Helix Sleep Quiz and find your perfect mattress in under 2 minutes, and your personalized mattress is shipped straight to your door free of charge. Helix has several different mattress models to choose from, each designed for specific sleep positions and feel preferences. Helix is offering 20% off all mattress orders and 2 free pillows for our listeners. Go to helixsleep.com/clay and use the code HelixPartner20. This is their best offer yet and won't last long. With Helix, better sleep starts now.
So, Kyle, you
you were a Missouri game warden for 27 years.
Yeah, that's right.
Just patrol. Like you had what region of the state did you
I
patrol?
worked in the northwest part.
Okay.
All the time. Pretty much before I grew up, the northwest part of the state. So that's rolling hills, prairie, big coons.
Nice.
When I was thinking on the way down here, how much that changed from when I started in 1980. Coons were $40 a piece.
Yep.
Wow.
So what would that be in today's dollars? $70 or something? Be crazy.
It'd be
Yeah.
good.
It'd be crazy.
Yeah.
It'd be
It'd
crazy.
be better.
Yeah.
It'd be better than $1.50 because that's what it is.
You'd be
Yeah,
better
exactly.
at coon
Yeah.
hunting than engineering, that's for sure.
Hey, I got a question to
It'd
ask
be
you.
engineers coon hunting.
And
That's what
you can shoot me straight here.
Okay.
So we did this Donnie Baker series
Yes.
about Missouri.
Yeah.
It occurred to me as we were doing this that could, I don't know, did you feel like that in any way undermined the law enforcement people in Missouri at all?
No, I didn't think so.
That wouldn't-
I thought it was fairly handled. I thought that was a hard-hitting podcast. Holy cow. Yeah, though, I mean,
Because I didn't give them. I tried to get the guys that dealt with Donnie. That's who I wanted. Wasn't that I couldn't do that. So I could have had other people in the department on kind of speaking on behalf of the Missouri Game and Fish, and I chose not to do that. That's kind of what I'm getting at.
no, I thought that was completely fair. I thought it was, I understood what you wanted to do. I understood why they kind of were doing what they were doing. I thought it was all good. It was fine. Yeah, I don't think it was their problem at all.
Yeah. Good.
So-
That's good to hear. So what's the major in your 27 years? What would you say was the bulk of the what were you patrolling for? Like, if you were in some region of the country, it might be spotlighting deer. Another part of the country, it might be people fishing without a license. What was going on?
Well, in that period of time, it changed. Obviously, when coons were $40, I mean, I remember stopping a car one night that they had a spotlight plugged in, and they had alligator clips on the wires and the light going out both sides. And they
were coon hunting.
getting every tree. Well,
Subtle.
they had a rifle
Subtle.
and a 22. I mean, a deer rifle. So they're going to kill anything. But at that time, it was just, you had a lot of that at night because furs were so high. The deer and the turkey population was just developing, just booming, and so you'd work that pretty hard from a protection standpoint in the daytime. As soon as it get dark, the calls will start coming in on spotlight. So there was a time there where you just worked and worked and worked. It changed.
A lot of spotlighting.
Yeah, it changed. I mean, just like it probably has everywhere. I think people are, well, for one thing, we got lots of deer. Now the turkey situation is different. That's different, but over time it changed. It changed with the season. You'd work fishing in the summertime, over limits, no permits, littering, stuff like that. Every once in a while, you'd be off on some, drug investigation that you'd come across. Probably one of the craziest ones was quail in closed season that turned into a multi-state working with DEA and everything else on a drug thing. So.
Oh, really? Can you go into any more detail on that?
Well, yeah, I guess I could. It was a marijuana growing operation. The guys had shot a quail off of a fence post. Somebody called us about that when I went with. Actually, I called another agent friend of mine. When he and I went to investigate it, something just didn't add up. It didn't smell right. They're like, "Oh, those guys, they were from Kentucky. They worked for me. I'll just pay their fine. It's okay." Well, nobody just wants to pay the fine, So we did a little check-in with Kentucky and figured out who we were dealing with, figuring like something else. Long story short, it was with the Highway Patrol and an investigation through the summer and a takedown in the fall. And a couple farms seized. And
so
you're looking around corners.
They had a marijuana. They were growing illegal marijuana in Missouri.
Yes.
And these guys from another state had come in and shot a quail.
Well, the guys were from another state that were doing it. They were all from Kentucky.
Oh, okay.
And they would take it back to Kentucky in trucks. Look like farm gate equipment.
I thought the grass was blue in Kentucky.
Yeah, that wasn't. And that's kind of what was going on there. So yeah, it was that got to be a pretty hairy situation. So, and we had a couple people ended up dead.
Oh man!
And it's questionable suicide. It's supposed to be suicide. I don't know if it was or not. Kind of thing. So Yeah, that was an interesting time for a little while.
Sometimes
So
people steal more change than they can swim with.
That's right.
And they sink. That's
Yeah.
what that means.
Yeah.
I just got done with a very interesting book. I wish I could figure out a way to do a Bear Grease podcast on it. It's a book called When Money Grew on Trees, and it's about. I just picked it up.
Oh, is that about the sheriff?
It's about. It was written by a guy named David Mack. It's kind of, when I got the book, it was like I felt like it was going to be like a homegrown, like self-published.
I'm sorry, I'm just so cold.
Yep. You're hurting my bear.
I'm really sorry.
There we go.
I'm just trying to move out of the.
Yeah, I thought it was going to be like this homegrown, not that well put together book. It's called When Money Grows on Trees by David Mack, and it's about the sheriff in Madison County, Arkansas, named Ralph Baker, who's dead now, and he was a really crooked sheriff. But basically, the story is about how this guy David Mack, who's also now dead, for about 10 years, he was growing marijuana in Madison County at the marijuana boom. It's kind of funny. Like, Brent spent his life fighting illegal drugs, and then now a lot of these drugs are not a lot, or some of them are legal.
Yep.
Yeah.
Do you know that?
Yeah,
like,
I know, it's
makes
crazy,
that
isn't
make,
it?
Isn't it ironic?
upsets Brent.
Yeah. That's the next verse.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, there was a lot of marijuana was a big deal. Marijuana was being grown in wild places, so game wardens interacted with marijuana a lot.
Right.
Is that right?
Yeah, we didn't have it so much in the northern part of Missouri. That was more like
Hard
the
to
state.
hide it in the plains.
Well, what they did was they planted in corn. See, corn was so
really?
cheap back then that they would go in and take out individual rows of corn and hide it in the corn. Unless you flew over it, you weren't going to see it. And so that's kind of what that. But what these guys are probably you're talking about is in the national forests and places they hide it back up the hollers and
they were growing it all over, making
This is just like 30 miles from here.
Yeah, they were making a ton of money. Wild stories, just unbelievable stories. Ralph Baker was like,
Copperhead Road, baby.
yeah,
That's what that's like.
So, Kyle, you're game warden. Are you like, how do you approach enforcement? Were you, I don't know, you're such a nice guy.
How could you be?
You're way too nice to be in law enforcement.
Yeah, you're way too not. Were you able to put on a hard face and bust somebody in the chops, not physically, like metaphorically, when you needed to?
You never wanted to do that. You didn't enjoy doing that. But the only way I could describe it is if I was telling somebody, like, if Bear's going to take my job and he's going to run, he's going to start.
Yeah,
I'm going to say, look, you're gonna be here for a long time. Your kids are going to go to school with everybody's kids here. You know, treat people the way you want to be treated, and you can't be behind every tree. You have got to have cooperation. You've got to have people that will say, look, you need to know about this. You didn't hear it from me, but so that's the only way that works. When you have 400 or 500 square miles, there's one of you. It's not like other kinds of law enforcement. And in a way, it is. I mean, you have to have that kind of same rapport with people you work with. Even the bad guys if you don't treat them with respect, you're not going to get respect.
Yeah.
So you have to do that. I think that's a prerequisite. You know.
Yeah.
So
that makes sense.
Yeah. So then when it does go bad, you know, they're actually sometimes will come and help you, or, you know, if you're fighting somebody on the bank, which I never had this happen to me, but I had other guys that they'd have guys come pile in and help them get everything straightened up, you know. So
yeah. This is such a cliche question, and I've asked this to almost every law enforcement person I've ever dealt with. I'm sorry, law enforcement people. This is equivalent to someone asking me, "Hey Clay, have you ever been attacked by a bear?" And I'm just like, "Come on, don't you have a better question than that?" What's the wildest thing you've ever been a part of in law enforcement? Like a big sting or something, a shootout? Like, man, what?
Here's the thing. If I thought for 5 minutes I'd tell you something, I'd tell you something different tomorrow, probably.
Right.
I mean, it just depends on what the thing was.
Did you ever feel really in danger?
There were times. There were some times where the hair would stand up on your neck pretty good, you know. Yeah. I mean, I probably, as a trooper, you had to deal with that more often than as.
So you were a state trooper too.
I retired as a trooper. Yeah, I went over when I was.
So you were game warden for 27, and then worked as a Missouri state trooper.
Right. That's why I retired as a trooper. So
gotcha.
And the number of contacts as a trooper does in a year's time are like 10 times what a game warden does. So game wardens all around people with firearms and everything all the time, by yourself a lot. It's different, but just approaching cars, nighttime stuff, searching buildings, drugs, people people just on a cell phone hitting you on the side of the road is probably as scary as anything. So
That's not quite as flashy to talk about, though.
No, it's not. It's not the way you want to. You want to go out in a shootout. You don't want to go.
Well, it's like it's kind of like training a mule. Yeah. If you do it right, he doesn't buck.
It all comes back to this.
Troopers and mules. That's pretty. I like that.
I mean, it makes perfect sense. I'm surprised y'all didn't come up with the analogy yourself. If you do it right, the mule doesn't buck, and it's non-climactic.
Yeah.
So in a way, if you're doing it right, like you de-escalate situations.
That's right.
You don't get in trouble. You don't get shot at.
That's the skill. Is You're trying to get somebody to do something you don't want them to do. They don't want to do, and you're going to talking them into it. It's easier than forcing them into it.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, that's fair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. 100%. You just try to. I always let them dictate the level of.
That's right.
How we talked. How I talked to them, and lots of times, it escalated quickly.
Mm-hmm.
But you got to be on top of that kind of stuff. And
were you a game warden in Missouri in 2009?
No, 07 would have been my last year.
Okay.
Right. So what I was thinking about, though, when you had that date timeline with Donnie, was the $500, I think, was the maximum fine you could get.
Really? At that time?
I think that was
for whitetail?
Well, for any misdemeanor, wildlife.
Is that right?
Yeah. So now, once in a while, there'd be a hunting privileges could be revoked or something like that. That'd be the most serious thing probably would happen.
Yeah.
Even if you seize a firearm, unless the judge orders it destroyed, usually that went back. So.
Huh.
Yeah. So
it's a lot stiffer now, probably, I would imagine.
I don't think it's I think there was some adjustment to that in general, but it's not that much stiffer. They don't have liquidated damages, I'm pretty sure.
What about trophy penalties?
They don't have that. Iowa has
30 grand.
Yeah.
That's we're up to 90 grand. Wow.
So it's an expensive podcast.
I don't hear it. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you don't think they have a trophy penalty?
No, a lot of states do.
Yeah.
I know Iowa does. I think maybe Kansas does. I'm not sure, but not so much for so many points or what the deer scores. We don't have that.
Mm-hmm.
Unless it's changed after I was there, and I don't think it has. So
yeah. Okay.
So
interesting.
Why would it have only been $500?
That's the maximum for a misdemeanor crime. So whether it's, you threw a beer can out the window, maybe it's $25. Maybe you threw the whole box out. Maybe that was hot. It could go up to
a range.
That was a range. Yeah.
It's 1,000 here unless it's changed.
Yeah. And
really?
It may be 1,000 there now too. Because there was a adjustment to that whole criminal code about that time. And of course, once it's not your thing every day, well, it could get by me, but wouldn't shock me if it's 1,000, put it that way. So
interesting. We need to talk about American wilderness. All right. Kyle told me that he's been reading Roderick Nash's Wilderness in the American Mind, which is, didn't you tell me that?
Yeah,
Teacher's pet.
Yeah, I get the vote. Yeah,
man, I sent that book to two people who will remain unnamed. They're not in this room
for obvious reasons.
That were
A couple of nerds.
Yeah. And I actually sent it to him to read because I wanted him to be a guest on the podcast.
Yeah.
And they were basically like, no thanks. So I loved the book. It was interesting to hear some criticism of the book from some of my guests. But American Wilderness, there's so much I want to talk about. Let me run through the list here. So we talked about the myth of American wilderness, and the myth was connected to this in a way towards the end of the podcast about the irony of American wilderness. You know, how we, perceived a wilderness, right. But then also later tried to, after we had destroyed all the wilderness, tried to save some of it. Right. And that's when I wrote the fourth verse to Ironic by Alanis Morissette.
My buddy,
that was
my friend Colton Posey down in Texas. He sent me a message. It said, "Friends don't let their friends sing Alanis Morissette." Colton, he's gone rogue, man. I can't help it.
I literally sent it to Phil Taylor at Meat Eater and said, "Phil, I fully intend for this to be taken out. You let me know." And he wrote me back and he was like, "I love it, Clay. You got to take it. Risk it for the biscuit." And I was like, I guess that's what we do every week is put our necks on the line.
Yeah.
Okay, myth of wilderness, and then we talked about how scarcity is a more powerful thing than plenty. We talked about pragmatism, rock and ice, and then on the Bear Grease Academy pop quiz, who wrote the frontier thesis?
Oh, shoot.
Who wrote it?
I should have.
Kyle knows.
I know.
We'll tell him, Kyle.
You're talking about Frederick Jackson Turner?
That's right.
F.J.
Bear, could you have got that?
No way.
Come on, dude. This is on the Bear Grease Academy. Now, this series leans on more of the academic side of what we do on Bear Grease. Okay?
Uh-huh.
The Donnie, I feel like this year we've kind of gone to the pendulum, pendulum of kind of topics. Like the Donnie Baker story was this modern, didn't have anything to do with history, and it was this very
human interest.
It was a human interest story about wildlife crime, which is really cool. Which those are hard to come by. I mean, I'd probably do one like that, 10 times a year if I could get them in hand. They're just hard to come by when they work like that.
There's not very many Downey Bakers. That's the problem.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
It's true.
Yeah.
But this one to me is just as core to, I feel like, what we're doing here at Bear Grease.
Yeah.
Because I think these things, like I was an adult really before I learned about the really American history, the history of wilderness and all this stuff. And I looked back into the previous 30 years and was like, oh, that's where all that came from. So it's almost like I was reading a history book about myself. I wasn't learning new ways to think. A lot of these ways I thought. And it was so revelatory to me to come into a position of understanding about why as Americans we think about wild places the way we do. And particularly as Americans that love to hunt and fish, we would be on the extreme of people that probably are thinking about wild places. There are others that don't hunt and fish that think about wild places, but we think about it in a particular way. And to me, that's really fascinating when you look back and see how you've been influenced unknowingly by culture. And that kind of goes back to the first episode when I was talking to Steve Ranella, and I messed up and brought up throat. But what I really was trying to ask him, what I was really trying to ask him was, how have you been influenced unknowingly just because you're an American to think about wild places, And I think if I'd asked that question, he might have answered a little different. But I know how I would answer is that I'm like, dude, I feel like I'm very much so influenced by my culture.
Yeah.
But who would like to start? What stood out to you about this second part?
I'll tell you what was cool to me was listening to the Rough Draft, talking about Yellowstone while you and I were riding through Yellowstone.
Yeah.
The stuff they were talking about of finding value in something and looking out the window and being able to see it.
Yeah.
Now that was a double whammy for me. But it's just
Brent and I were in Bozeman last week, and I had to listen to the podcast before it came out. And so we were in a truck with Corey Calkins from Meat Eater driving through Yellowstone, looking at bison. Brent saw a wolf.
Yep.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was very cool.
We saw bighorn sheep. We were like driving through, and we're listening to this podcast about wilderness where we talked about the creation of Yellowstone.
Yeah. And it was just very, I wouldn't have gotten, I didn't get more out of it by being there, but it was something I could hear. And usually when I'm visualizing in my mind, like you're talking about Tecumseh or any Daniel Boone or anything else, but I was able to look out and see the tangible benefits of what had taken place and what had been preserved. And it was pretty awesome to be able to do that. And during that time of year, there wasn't a lot of people there. I mean, there were stretches of road that we drove down there that we were only folks driving.
Yeah.
For a few minutes. We didn't see anyone.
Cool.
So it's easy to see. I'm glad they saw the value back then. I'm glad they saw it. It could have been any number of historical things that could have happened and that never taken place. You think about what it took for all that to happen, for Roosevelt to be president, for him to have the feelings that he had towards things that everyone in this room still has that same love and respect for wilderness, whether it's a capital W or either one, which wilderness is wilderness to me. I dig it all. I dig the scope of woods right here behind your house that you talk about not being really big. Mm-hmm. But it's all relative to where you are.
It's a wilderness experience.
You can only take up so much space regardless of where you are. Mm-hmm. So, if, 100 acres doesn't look any different than 2 million because you can only see so far.
We had a review on iTunes where a guy that I think is likes the Bear Grease podcast.
But you're not sure.
He's written several reviews, and he's I'm going to call him out. I love it. He says, "I'm a bison, not a buffalo." That's his name.
I saw that.
And he said, listening to a bunch of Easterners squabble that Yellowstone isn't wild or wilderness is laughable. Over 2 million acres of backcountry of an intact ecosystem, pre-European contact, and harboring the most remote area from the lower 48, I was trying to remember, did we talk about, I think maybe in the first render somebody said, well, if Yellowstone's really a wilderness. And
that was Josh.
I think Mr. Buffalo.
It wasn't me.
Mr. Buffalo,
Was it Luke?
our dear friend Mr. Buffalo.
I alluded to that there were wilderness areas in a not capital W wilderness areas, and Mr. Newcomb shot me down. He's like, "Nah, we're going."
I mean, it may have been me, but I don't think if we got down to it that I was saying Yellowstone isn't wild. What I was saying is the highway corridors. The highway corridors.
Is he accusing you of being an Easterner?
It sounds like it.
Oh, that's a first.
Well, I mean, the cardinal direction is all a matter of perspective.
It's true.
That's profound. That needs to go on a T-shirt.
No, so I stand correct about it. I mean, yeah, Yellowstone is a massive wilderness.
Yeah,
it is. The highway corridors during the tourist months, like it doesn't feel like a wilderness.
Yeah.
Right.
Ready to win Mother's Day and cement your reputation as the best gift giver in the family? Give the moms in your life an Aura digital picture frame preloaded with decades of family photos. She'll love looking back on these memories and seeing what you're up to today. Even better, with unlimited storage and an easy-to-use app, you can keep updating mom's frame with new photos, so it's the gift that keeps on giving. And this is not a joke. Juju Newcomb has an Aura frame, and we share photos, and they're incredible. Also, my mother-in-law has one. We have them. They truly are really good, really high quality. The Aura frame is easy to set up. It takes just 2 minutes to set up a frame using the Aura app. It also adjusts the display depending on light levels in the room to maintain the true color of your photos. For real, the digital screen is amazing. Right now, Aura has a great deal for Mother's Day. Listeners can save on the perfect gift by visiting auraframes.com to get $30 off plus free shipping on their best-selling frame when you use code BEAR, B-E-A-R, BEAR. That's auraframes.com. Use code BEAR at checkout to save. Terms and conditions apply. The old-timers say that the turkeys start gobbling when the leaves are as big as squirrels' ears and the red buds start popping. And we're about there. And we are there in the South. The onX Hunt app is one of my most valuable tools in the spring woods. With tools like coniferous versus deciduous tree distribution layer, you can save time by locating edges or transition areas of mixing habitats from home. Find an area like this with water in close proximity, and more than likely, there will be a goblin turkey nearby. Knowing the exact boundaries of private ground ensures I stay on the right side of the fence, but can easily find public ground to go see if I can't strike a gobbler. If you do get one to sound off, using compass mode and waypoints will help you pinpoint his exact location, allowing you to move in and make the perfect setup to bring him right into your lap. Download the onX Hunt app today. You'll be glad you did. onX has a special offer for you. Use code BEARGREASE to receive 20% off your membership at onxmaps.com/hunt this spring. We've all seen plenty of gadgets and fads come and go, but here's one product that stood the test of time: Seafoam motor treatment. Lots of hunters and anglers know that Seafoam helps engines run better and last longer. It's really simple. When you pour it in your gas tank, Seafoam cleans harmful fuel deposits that cause engine problems. I'm talking common stuff like hard starts, rough engine performance, or lost fuel economy. Seafoam is an easy way to prevent or overcome these problems. Just pour a can in your gas tank and let it clean your fuel system. You probably know someone who's used a can of Seafoam to get their truck or boat going again. People everywhere rely on Seafoam to keep their trucks, boats, and small engines running the way they should the entire season. Help your engine run better and last longer. Pick up a can of Seafoam today at your local auto parts store or visit seafoamworks.com to learn more.
There was a statement in the tail end of that book of Nash's book about the lower 48 anyway, whatever the figure is. When you see that, what the wilderness number of wilderness acres in the United States sounds like a lot.
Yeah.
It's equal to what we have paved.
Wow.
So
that's interesting.
That gives you kind of a perspective.
Really?
That's quite
It's in the last part of that.
If it's in Nash's book, he did a revised version of that book in the last 15 years.
I think that's one.
He originally wrote that book in 1967,
right?
As a doctoral thesis, and then he revised it. But I was surprised to learn, and it still seems like a lot to me, but this is the research that I found, that there's 111 million acres in America that are designated as federal wilderness, which is about 5% of the total landmass of America.
I still don't think that's a lot. And you kept saying that's a lot.
Dude, that's a lot of land.
5%?
But 5% of federal wilderness.
But that includes Alaska now, probably. Right?
It does, and much of it's in Alaska.
So if you take,
yes,
I think it was something like 2%, whatever it was. The figure in the lower 48 equals the paved acres.
Okay,
so
that 2% is what I
think that's it.
Worked off of before that. 2% is wilderness, but maybe it's 2% in the lower 48. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But I found it interesting that the census caused so much of a stir, that people
wilderness angst.
Yeah, that people had that was a thought to say, wait a minute.
Yeah.
This is what defines us, and it's gone? Like, what are we going to do now? How are we going to raise American kids? They're just going to be like every other kid in the world.
Well, think about 1890.
Yeah.
The country was founded in 1776. So for 125 years, basically, 115 years, there had been a frontier.
Yeah.
I mean, for a century.
Right.
There was a frontier. If you were an American, you could go to that frontier. Like, if you wanted to risk it for the biscuit, and go west.
We're using
twice.
that phrase a lot.
Twice I've said
that. And you have not said wimpification yet.
Yeah. That should be on my list. Yeah, I got to write that one. We got to talk about wimpification.
Yeah.
Well, just you can see how it could be etched into American ideals of just what it meant to be an American. I messed up on the naming of this podcast. I named this podcast in haste. I should have named it Homo Americanis.
Yeah, I thought that was a great term.
That's what Dr. Sarah Dant said. And that's a term that's used by historians when they talk about America. And the idea is that there was this, new kind of person created in the world, the American. And
it is a pretty unique experience, the American experience, especially during that time.
Yeah.
Another thing that happened that helped turn the tide, from the howling wilderness to the wilderness we wanted to protect was, as a young country, we didn't have these big fancy, Taj Mahals and all these things over back in Europe, but we had wilderness.
Yeah.
And once it looked like we could run out of that changed it. We've identified with that as Americans. So.
Yeah. To me, that's one of the most fascinating things is that, our artists, our painters, they focused on wilderness. Misty, what was the stat you said about?
That 2/3 of the world lives in urbanized areas today. And I was actually just looking at a map here. And if you look at this map, it's like a line graph that has a huge jump in the 1800s, and it, continues to peak out in the 1900s when people were moving to urban areas. And I was looking at that, and then you can see it compared to this map, like
the graph.
The graph. Mm-hmm. Do you want me to re-say
interpret
that?
it? No, just interpret that for me.
Well, I was just thinking about, I was looking at that graph because I was thinking about the time that Josh was saying the angst was happening. It was happening when there was this huge upswing in
people moving to
the urban areas. And now it's, it's increased so much more. And they project that, by 2050, I think it's like maybe even 80% of people. And there's arguments about those numbers. It really depends on how you define an urban area.
Right.
If a town and a suburb, it really does depend on how you define the area. So there's a lot of arguments around it, but it's dramatically increased, and we're becoming more urbanized. And it's just kind of fascinating how if you're in an urban area, how you would, and if people were at that time, if the U.S. was becoming more urbanized, how it would create that sense of anxiety. But it's interesting to me. It's a sense of anxiety, but there's still no one staying in the wilderness.
Right.
It's kind of
funny
and
it would be way different now. The back in those days, people were so much more in touch with, the natural landscape.
Yeah.
What I think about when you say that 2/3 of the world is urbanized, and I don't know what that would be in the U.S., but what does somebody that's lived their whole life in one of the major cities in the U.S. and you talk to them about wilderness, like what's their thought on it? And I'm sure there's some people that live in the cities that would love wilderness and value it, but I'm sure there's a lot of people that have never been there. They have no context for the value of it.
Well, that part where you were talking about definitions of wilderness was pretty interesting, because that is, when you guys are on the Mississippi, excuse me, and it's nighttime and you're inside those levees, you're pretty much out there by yourself.
Yeah, for real.
But it's not designated wilderness, but it's wild country.
Yeah, yeah.
So.
And I think it's interesting if you look, and let's just take the U.S. If you look at the U.S. and you look at where all the population centers are, this comes up every single year when we talk about voting, because so much of the U.S.'s population is, those people live in New York City, L.A., these big hubs on the coast, and that's why they call the middle part of the U.S. the flyover states, because you fly over and it's a big deal because they're making decisions politically that impact the whole country,
right?
Because there's more of them than there are the people in the middle. And so if you're thinking about the value of wilderness, and you think about the people who are choosing to live outside of the wilderness, not just outside of it, but far, far away from it, and maybe never experiencing it. And that's the majority of the people now.
Yeah.
Then how does that impact the decisions that are made in those places, and whether people value it or not? And I've heard people, I would not call us urban. Like some definitions would put us urban right here where we're sitting right now. And there's nothing to me urban about this location, but I've talked to people, and they talk about like research and things that we're spending money on, and what's that little lizard? Is it the Ozark Hellbender? Is that what it's called? And they want to know, like, why are we spending any money? Who cares if that little?
It's a salamander. It's not a lizard.
It's not a lizard. It's a salamander. Yeah. But like,
who
cares if
busted?
Who cares if those things are extinct or not? And I just think about some of the things that you value about the wilderness areas. You have to. That value comes from
exposure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Bear, what stood out to you?
Well, whenever I was listening to the first one, whenever you said it was going to be about wilderness, like just looking at the title, hearing you talk about it, it didn't really make sense to me, like what story could even be behind wilderness. And I thought it was interesting how like you talked about how like even just being an American can shape your perception of wilderness.
Right.
And whenever I really thought about it, like I was just thinking about like the way that I look at everything. Like whenever I'm like in a city and I see like, a strip mall, I'm thinking like, what was there before that?
Yep,
like what
exactly.
would have been there 200 years ago?
Yeah.
And so I think part of it could have just been like the way that, I was raised, and even like the way that like we hunt is like we try to go as deep as we can, and there's more value to something if you really kill it like wild, like with a self bow, or like way back in a wilderness
hard
area.
place.
Yeah. And so I thought that was kind of interesting, just seeing the way that actually did change my perceptions on like what I do.
Did you see you saw some of the value systems that you had? You connected it back to some deeper stuff that more than just like
right,
just what we've done together.
Yep.
Yeah. Interesting, man. I really believe, and it's happening today, so it's not that profound to say this, but the most scarce and valuable commodity on planet Earth will one day be places that are unscarred by humanity. I mean, there's no way, like Ranella said so emphatically, you can't get it back. Like very rarely do you get anything back from civilization in any reasonable amount of time. I mean, like if the Earth persists another 10,000 years,
right,
and civilizations rise and fall. I mean, I'm foreshadowing about what's going to be on the next episode, but perhaps one day what we've done here will be ruins like what's in the Amazon that they're finding with LIDAR and all this stuff, where they're finding like these civilizations that nothing is left except just for a few ways they've crafted the land.
And is that considered wilderness? You know what I mean? If there's ruins.
Right.
I mean, at what point does it go? Could it ever go back to wilderness?
Right. It just
won't matter to us because we'll all be dead.
You're right. But and here I have my 18-year-old son in the room with me, and I think about like there's something about seeing Bear and my other kids grow up a little bit and become adults, and think about them having kids.
Yep.
And you think it's not but just like a couple of generation jumps, and you realize time is marching on. And what will the interface with wild places look like to my great-great-grandchildren? Like, I'll be gone. Will they have the opportunity to interface with wild places like I have? And it goes back to this whole Homo Americanis thing. I feel like for them to be like Newcombs, they would have to have a wild place to interact with.
Yep.
It's kind of a romantic idea, because maybe by that time that just won't be important, or there's, I let go of the legacy. Like you can't hold on to it that tight. But that's why, I mean, we are reaping the benefits of stuff that all these guys did back in the day. I mean, kind of basically around the mid-19th century, in the 1850s, the preservation of land in America.
Leopold and Marshall and all those people.
Well, it was in the 1830s, and best I could tell, somebody correct me, bison, not a buffalo, you can correct me. I'm pretty sure Hot Springs, Arkansas was the first designation by the federal government as something that was blocked off, which was surprising to me.
I didn't know that.
They call it the first national park down there, which is not quite. There's a way to spin it. Yeah. But point being, those guys started doing something, and with the trajectory as it was going, they might have said, "Man, in 2024, those futuristic humans, will they be able to shoot a deer with a bow? Will they be able to hunt elk? Will they be able to see a bison? Will they be able to interact with, maybe, I don't know what they would have thought or if they would have cared, but we're living inside the fruit of that. So people will live, point being, people will live inside the fruit of our conservation decisions today. Should the earth persist, and, I don't know that it will, but we're going to be 250 years from now, and they're going to be talking about what we did during this time of massive expansion of civilization, like unprecedented ever before in human history. It's so, you wake up in planet Earth, time is so deceptive. You wake up and you just think it's normal. You wake up and you think having a Ford truck is normal that uses, fossil fuels that have been dug out of the ground, and you think that getting water out of a tap, and you think that not having polio is normal. Right. No, it's not normal. Those things would have been normal to most of humanity. Yeah. And then we also just think that it's just, we're on such a fragile place with wild places and our interaction with us.
When you and Steve were talking about he used the analogy of the ready mix concrete. Yeah. It's like there was a point in time when really the life of an American was about dominating the frontier, going to the frontier. Right. And now it's like our philosophy is teaching our kids and imparting our kids into values that just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. Yeah. Right. And that spills over into way more than just wilderness. I mean, that is a life principle that just because you can doesn't mean that you should.
That was Hal Herring touched on that. The last barrel of oil. Couldn't we get it? Yeah, we could get it. But as Americans, and we, because of capitalism and our way of life, we have the ability to have the luxury of setting those things aside. But it's the thing that stuck with me through all this is that you see through all those different periods reading that book that they'd come up with the idea, and we'd do Yosemite, but then they couldn't save Hetch Hetchy. And then it is a constant. Just because there's wilderness designated out there now doesn't mean that when bear's sitting here someday that it'll be there. If somebody decides they want to go get something, they can get the political. What you guys are doing with this, with podcasts and what media, it's important. Yeah. I mean, I feel like I'm handing the baton off now to you guys. It's your turn to run with it, and you're doing a great job. But it's important that message is understood. Yeah. Yeah. Because it's a constant. Got to stay vigilant. Mm-hmm. So.
Yeah. For sure.
I could be wrong, but I think that the inspiration, it was somehow influenced because they saw what was happening to Niagara Falls. Have you ever been to Niagara Falls? You've been there, and it's super commercialized, and that was happening way back in back in the day. Mm-hmm. And I mean, can you imagine what Niagara Falls would be like if you just stumbled on that? Like none of all the none of the shops, none of that, and you just kind of walked up on that. I mean, that'd be so incredible. That would be so incredible. And Teddy Roosevelt saw what happened there and how it had become commercialized and had basically been like, a circus built right on top of this incredible wilderness area. And that was that was in part the inspiration for preserving the other things.
Ready to win Mother's Day and cement your reputation as the best gift giver in the family? Give the moms in your life an Aura digital picture frame preloaded with decades of family photos. She'll love looking back on these memories and seeing what you're up to today. Even better, with unlimited storage and an easy-to-use app, you can keep updating mom's frame with new photos, so it's the gift that keeps on giving. And this is not a joke. Juju Newcomb has an Aura frame, and we share photos, and they're incredible. Also, my mother-in-law has one. We have them. They truly are really good, really high quality. The Aura frame is easy to set up. It takes just 2 minutes to set up a frame using the Aura app. It also adjusts the display depending on light levels in the room to maintain the true color of your photos. For real, the digital screen is amazing. Right now, Aura has a great deal for Mother's Day. Listeners can save on the perfect gift by visiting auraframes.com to get $30 off plus free shipping on their best-selling frame when you use code BEAR, B-E-A-R, BEAR. That's auraframes.com. Use code BEAR at checkout to save. Terms and conditions apply. The old-timers say that the turkeys start gobbling when the leaves are as big as squirrels' ears and the red buds start popping. And we're about there. And we are there in the South. The onX Hunt app is one of my most valuable tools in the spring woods. With tools like coniferous versus deciduous tree distribution layer, you can save time by locating edges or transition areas of mixing habitats from home. Find an area like this with water in close proximity, and more than likely, there will be a gobbling turkey nearby. Knowing the exact boundaries of private ground ensures I stay on the right side of the fence, but can easily find public ground to go see if I can't strike a gobbler. If you do get one to sound off, using compass mode and waypoints will help you pinpoint his exact location, allowing you to move in and make the perfect setup to bring him right into your lap. Download the onX Hunt app today. You'll be glad you did. onX has a special offer for you. Use code BEARGREASE to receive 20% off your membership at onxmaps.com/hunt this spring. We've all seen plenty of gadgets and fads come and go, but here's one product that stood the test of time: Seafoam motor treatment. Lots of hunters and anglers know that Seafoam helps engines run better and last longer. It's really simple. When you pour it in your gas tank, Seafoam cleans harmful fuel deposits that cause engine problems. I'm talking common stuff like hard starts, rough engine performance, or lost fuel economy. Seafoam is an easy way to prevent or overcome these problems. Just pour a can in your gas tank and let it clean your fuel system. You probably know someone who's used a can of Seafoam to get their truck or boat going again. People everywhere rely on Seafoam to keep their trucks, boats, and small engines running the way they should the entire season. Help your engine run better and last longer. Pick up a can of Seafoam today at your local auto parts store or visit seafoamworks.com to learn more.
This series for me has been trying to understand if, in fact, America had a unique ideology on wild places. That was a given to me that we did. But, you know, there's a lot of American myths that aren't real. Mm-hmm. You know, when we talk about American exceptionalism and all this stuff, you know, we like to pat ourselves on the back and say, oh, we're this great civilization and all this. And I mean, I want that to be true. And so that's kind of like, has the way that we've handled wilderness, is it really unique in the world? Mm-hmm. That's part of what I've been asking. And as I get to the end of this, I think the answer is an emphatic yes. We're not the only people that value wilderness, but we did set a trend in the world. But it's not really comparing apples to apples if you're trying to establish like some like moral hierarchy of, well, we were the civilization that set aside wilderness because we did it. And going back to what you said and what Hal said, we did it because we could. America became economically prosperous, and we had the liberty to set aside these huge wild places that we didn't have to extract resource from to feed our families. You see, prosperity is what allowed us to do this. Yeah. I kind of made an analogy, maybe even in the first one, about, you know, sometimes you see somebody and you're like, man, why is their truck always clean and their yard always mowed and they're this always that and they're this and this and this and this, and it's literally just they got the money, they got the time, they got their life in order, and it's like finances is the fuel of their ability to do a lot of stuff. Not the perfect analogy, but
I cleaned out my garage this weekend.
And you're rich. Now look at you. I think you're rich. No,
but you know, like I think about like Japanese farming practices and their, you know, how their belief was that they were not farming for themselves, but they were farming for a future generation, and the way they had to do it was so. It's interesting to me because we're not the only ones who valued preserving natural spaces for the next generation. It is a little different here. Yeah. But we're not the only ones.
Well, and it's different because of, and this goes back to what Dan Flores was talking about, which to me is probably the most interesting part of the whole wilderness conversation, is that when Europeans got here, the bulk of Europeans got here, there had already been enough pre-contact
from Hernando de Soto and all these guys that had come in and basically spread disease in the interior of America that, what did he say?
Depeopled or something like that.
Depeopled, but I believe he said there were they believe there to be 9 million Native Americans that dropped down to 1 million.
Wow.
So imagine, I was with Shepard and one of his other basketball buddies the other day. We were listening to this in the car, and I said, imagine that there were 10 people in your family and only one of them lived. Like, that's essentially what happened to the Native American people. So by the 1700s, when a lot of European started coming here, what they perceived was what we called a wilderness, but really it was a great Native American civilization on the decline because of disease, caused a ecological boom with animal. I mean, it's just fascinating. Mm-hmm. And so that peculiar history made us come on to this, the only kind of, Dan Flores called the last undiscovered continent. Now, Dr. Newcomb over here earlier today was like, what about Antarctica? And I was like, well, okay, if we want to talk about Antarctica.
I mean, I'm just saying, it's not like
she's getting a tattoo, Antarctica, the last frontier.
I've actually got lots of arguments for you. Even what you just said about prosperity.
I have lots of tattoos.
No, I have zero. But about prosperity enabling us, it makes me think about, you remember, this is like 20 years ago. There's some place out in the Buffalo. No, it's a fun story. There's some place close to the Buffalo River. It's an economically depressed area. I can't think of the name of the city, but the guy was talking to you about how everyone out there, people would come in, and it's such a well put together little town, but it's impoverished.
Was it Yellville, Arkansas?
It was not Yellville, but like all the houses were clean, all of those, and someone asked them. Someone came to the little diner that guy sat at, and they said, "Man, how they always keep this place look so nice and so well put together, and everybody's poor." And he said, "Well, pride's cheap."
Pride's cheap.
In other words, you don't have to have the economic. It's not necessarily prosperity that causes you to value certain things and keep things in order and keep things protected. I mean, I don't know. I don't like anything
I
you're
see
saying.
what you're saying.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
Because what you have, your possessions are
Yeah.
precious regardless
Right.
of what they are.
Yeah.
Stewardship.
Yeah.
I would argue that in America, the heartbeat, the blood that runs through the veins of this place
The Chevrolet.
is Chevrolet.
Folgers coffee.
From polar bears to Chevrolet, just like that.
Capitalism.
Yeah.
Capitalism.
Yeah.
Money. I mean, I think it's. I think we saved a lot of this wilderness by the skin of our teeth, and I think if we had been not as prosperous, we wouldn't have done it. But we did it, so we saved some of it, which is honorable. But
Man, I just want to argue with that.
come on, yeah. I mean, really, I want to hear what you.
Well,
say.
I think that a person could argue that capitalism is actually what keeps us from saving the wild places. That is actually
That's why
a threat.
you nailed the fourth verse of my Alanis Morissette. You want me to sing it again?
No.
Isn't it?
No, that's okay.
In fact, as Brent
It's
said,
irony.
friends don't
Yeah,
let
we
friends do that.
we wiped out the wilderness,
Yeah.
and then right at the end we skid to a halt and saved 5%.
Yeah. It's
Okay.
both. It's both.
Yeah.
It's both.
What Hal Herring said, he said John Muir and Gifford Pinchot were like two turbines spinning in opposite directions. Pinchot was utilitarian conservation, like utilize the land, take the resource, greatest good for the greatest number. And then John Muir was like, he sacralized wilderness. He was like, let's save it all. It's sacred. It's holy. It's this temple. And so it was these two things that created what we have, which is this very vast ideology. Like some people are like, put an oil pipeline through Alaska. Yeah, we want to keep this economy running, which is, and I got to say it, it's wild to me, the political positions that a lot of hunter and fisher hunters in the country, like where typically most hunters would be very conservative, like politically conservative, which we are. But at the same time, politically conservative usually means very light on or very what's the right word? Anti-environment, you know, and then to be liberal means to be pro-environment. And, you know, I've heard, it's kind of wild. It'd be cool if we could be a couple of those things switched around, you know, and not
flying
be
cars. I think it would be really cool. We ain't seen those yet. Flying cars, buddy. A turkey ain't safe anywhere if I got a flying car.
That was a good segue, man. To get us out of that. That was great.
That's all Brent's been thinking about this whole podcast. Flying cars.
Hey, wimpification. Do y'all think
What a
that
great
the Google algorithm's going to pick it up?
I sure hope so.
If someone
Because I'm using it for everything. Not just wilderness.
I got a good Hal Herring impression. The wimpification of America. I mean, Gifford Pinchot and John Muir, they're like two turbines. And I'm telling you, by God, the Eastern Deciduous Forest of white pines were falling like corn in front of a combine.
That's pretty sporty.
good.
I mean, you know, Clay. I love that
Hey, I
guy.
love that you had
too.
Ben,
I
I
love
love
that
that you
guy.
had Ben Masters on there too.
Yes.
His film was really impacting to me when we saw it years ago.
Years ago.
I think it was at the Banff Mountain
It
Film
was.
Festival,
Yep.
wasn't it? And man, have you ever seen that film?
I did, but I didn't recognize the name, and we were listening to it driving through Yellowstone.
Yeah, what an
And
incredible
he
story.
said his name, and I didn't realize who it was, and then he said the name of that movie. Where I thought, oh man, I watched that like last year.
Yeah. Man, Ben's done a lot
Pretty
of. He's a documentary filmmaker now. Made a lot of documentary films. So I'm sure me bringing up Unbranded would be like someone bringing up some silly
Bear Horizon.
film I did back in
Jedi sitting on your desk.
Yeah, and I'd be like, haven't you seen something I've done more recent than that? No, yeah. It was cool having been on. Wimpification. Okay, I mean, did we talk about that or did we just laugh about
We laughed.
that?
We
laughed.
You laughed about it.
I think we all know what
It's
it means.
sufficient.
We got
Wink,
it.
wink.
Okay. Pragmatism. That was one that I wouldn't have understood. Hal said almost all the wildernesses in the West are headwaters of major water reserves.
They're watersheds.
They're
watersheds, yeah.
When we listened to that with Corey, and Corey's from out there and has lived out there his whole life, and he didn't know that.
Right.
That surprised me.
Right. Talking about the Bob Marshall.
Yeah,
Best
talking about
kept
the
secret.
Bob. Yeah,
Well, a lot of it was Forest Service ground before it was wilderness, and it was because of watershed stuff. So
Yeah.
it was protected before it was designated. That came later. But yeah, that's
it was pretty interesting.
yeah.
Yeah. And then I have one more thing here, rock and ice. I like how
He got away with words.
well, he just knows he has a good grasp on the history. And I didn't give him a chance to touch on all of it. I just kind of cherry picked some of the stuff that he talked to me about. But how we kind of get this sense of nobility about, we saved all this wilderness and we were the first in the world to do this kind of stuff. We also saved all the places that were completely we couldn't do anything with it.
Like he said, there's no national parks in Iowa.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a very good
What-
analogy.
And you think about if you had a national park, and they kind of tried to do this, but it was way late in the Flint Hills area in Kansas, how cool that would be.
Right.
And it's still pretty cool. They've protected it with that grassland preserve, and they've got agreements with farm. They still ranch some of it and stuff. So it's cool what they've done. But think about a national
Yeah.
park there,
Yeah.
but it's not rock and ice.
Right.
It's pretty good stuff.
Right.
So, yeah.
Right.
So
Well, we're going to get into this, and we're going to do one more episode. Okay. I'm sorry, Josh.
I'm in it to win it now, man.
This is core to the Bear Grease way of life. We have to understand wilderness. We just
We
have
must
to.
suffer in order to
We
succeed.
just have to.
What
Risk
doesn't
it.
kill us, folks?
Risk it for the biscuit.
That's 4 times.
Yeah. I had somebody I trust very much, I won't say his name, was like, it was good. It was pretty academic. I'll be interested in seeing how many people listen to it.
I thought, man, you have bit off a wad here.
Yeah.
But it's good. I mean, it's been good. So, yeah.
I absolutely, I love it, man. I just think we have to, the good thing about having loyal people that listen to something, and I realize that there's a lot of people that don't listen to every Bear Grease. Like if you listen to Bear, maybe they've listened to 25% of them, but if you could just bear with me and listen to them all, you would have a pretty strong
I've actually
position.
got a buddy who only listens to these podcasts but won't listen to the render.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of people like that.
Why? I mean,
Do you
who lives
remember,
that?
Clay? Do you remember when we were in Saskatchewan bear hunting, and it was like day 4, and we were seeing 10 and 15 bears a day, but they were all the same bears. We looked out, and they're standing 30 yards from inside of 30 yards of where we're sitting, and we've been doing this every day. And we're in like hour 6 of day number 4, and Clay turns around, looks at me, and I said, boring. But the best, it came. We got a bear later on. So
Yeah.
I mean, you just wait.
This is foundational stuff here
Exactly.
Foundational.
to the Bear
You,
Grease
you have a
philosophy.
good way. You have a
Life
good way
can't-
of bringing it all together.
Podcasts can't all be Donnie Baker. Okay, I'm sorry.
Can all be uplifting and encouraging. Got to suffer through a bit.
We're in the Bear Grease Academy of
We gotta
Backwoodsmanship,
learn.
Philosophy, and Culture. You guys are maybe going to be graduates if you finish. If you finish the series.
They got to get
We're
something.
Is there
hanging
going to be
in.
a test at the end of this? 'Cause
Dude,
That's going to be
usually
a
is.
problem. Yeah.
yeah, those are going to be a
might have to
big,
cram.
huge test.
Yeah.
Kyle, I'm going to give you one last chance to tell me your best game warden story.
Oh, man. I'm just going to tell you what pops into my head. So this was a day when we had a lake that opened, a new lake. And so they're closed to fishing until they open up. And then when they open, usually get all kinds of fishing pressure. So we had a boat in the lake, some agent in the lake watching. I'm on the shore. They watch everybody on this shoreline. They say, okay, they're all fishing, go down, check them. So I walk down. And I walk up to this. The first people I come to are this older black couple, and I think older then. They're probably my age now, But they were retired, we'll say, fishing. And of course, the lake has a 15-inch length limit on bass, and they're on a little stringer. There's obviously a short bass, and I'm like, I do not want to, ruin their day. They're just down here fishing. This bass is fine. And I said. It was kind of away from them, just a little ways. I said, what's the deal with the bass here? And they said, we don't know. We don't know about that guy, So I said, well, if that guy comes back, tell him it's 15-inch length limit and that need to let that fish go. So I go on down the lake. They check everybody. Everything's fine. I come back, and now the bass is gone. The stringer is sitting right by the gentleman. And I'm like, oh, great. They've claimed this fish. The guys in the boat are probably going to say So I said,
I don't understand. When you came back, they had not released the fish?
No, they released the fish and took this little 25-cent rope stringer and put it with their stuff.
Oh, so
now
you think they've lied to you?
Well, no, I knew whose fish it was. I just wanted them to I'm trying to just tell them that fish is not cool, And so I come back, and now they have the stringer, and I know the guys in the boat probably saw them let the fish go. So I said, well, did you guys decide that fish is yours after all? And the lady said, no, sir, but we decided if he wasn't going to come back, we might as well have that stringer. So I said, good enough. You guys have a good day.
And he never came back again.
And I walked up the hill.
Oh, that's a good story. Yeah. That's a good story.
Yeah.
That answers my question about how you handled dealing with people.
If you could. I mean, most violations were not intentional. Something happened, right? A bird flew up, you shot the wrong bird. You didn't plan to go out and, something just happened.
Yeah.
So a lot of times you have to write those anyway, like Donnie's deal, but it all works out in the end. So, hey, yeah. I brought something for you.
Oh, yeah.
I wanted to not forget this before. Now, it's not, I don't want to get your hopes up too high here.
They're high, man.
I mean, it's not from Cabela's, but I had this on my desk for years. This is salt that I rendered from Salt Lick at Boone's Lick in Missouri.
Way.
Cool.
Yeah, it's Nathan Boone and Daniel Morgan Boone ran that salt works. And so it still comes out of the ground. It's not a salty, but I went there one time with a buddy and we that's from maybe a gallon of water. So,
Wow.
So
Really?
that's
Man,
Boone.
that is
Oh,
a
that's
pretty
major
cool.
gift.
Yeah.
Heck, from
Yeah.
Boone's Lick.
And I
Big
didn't want.
win.
I didn't want.
Wow.
I didn't have two of them.
Hey, that is
So
you've nailed it. You know
That's
what
a
I
good-
tell.
yeah.
I have a lot of people give me stuff, which I'm always grateful for.
Yeah.
Hey, there was a lady. I'm going to call them out. Snake River
I saw
Produce
that
up in
hat over there.
Idaho. I met
Very cool hat.
this lady up in Utah, and she gave me a pack of freeze dried onions.
Oh yeah.
So people give me stuff all the time.
Nice.
Kyle gave me that Tecumseh painting.
Yeah.
And I've made a post. I said, of all the gifts, this is like spot on. This is probably as good as the Tecumseh painting.
well, you could
Look,
sprinkle
it's
it on.
going to go
some-
right here by the bear grease.
All right, there you go. Cool. Well, anyway,
Boone's Lick.
I'm having to move stuff out of my office to do some new flooring. So I'm.
Well, I appreciate it,
Yeah.
man. That's cool.
So Brent,
Yeah.
I don't have an old decoy for you, but I got a paper shotgun shell.
Oh,
To go with
look
it.
at that.
And I don't know if you collect patches, but there's an MSHP patch.
Thank you
Aw,
very much.
nice.
I've
So-
been getting a lot of these. I never was a patch collector. I've given away
Yeah, same.
hundreds. But since I've gotten on this platform, I get them from all over. I got them from a guy, a sergeant, Michigan State Trooper, had sent me some.
Cool.
And some that he wore on his uniform.
Oh, that's pretty
Nice.
cool.
And yeah,
Well, there you go.
Thank you, brother.
Yeah, yeah.
I appreciate it
Yeah,
very much.
yeah.
Well, thanks for coming, Kyle. Really appreciate it.
Enjoyed it.
Everybody,
Really did. Yeah.
great conversation. We got one more, and it's going to be racy. I hate to tell you. I hate
Racier
to
than
tell
this
you. It's just it's going to get downright
Are you rewriting any more song
dirty.
lyrics? Whoa.
You're not going to believe the song I'm going to sing on there.
Let's keep.
ZZ Top.
Yeah, let's be careful.
Lots of foreshadowing
Why don't
here.
you run some of that by
oh,
me
man.
first?
Hey, I got to say this. I met Evan Felker in Montana. Josh, do you know who that is?
Should I?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you
the
should.
lead singer for the Turnpike Troubadours.
Oh, okay. I do.
Yeah.
Me and Brent met him.
And you guys
And
best friends
man,
now?
There's not
We're
many.
in the band, pal.
I wish. Yeah, he doesn't even know that I have like 5 hit songs ready to be recorded.
None of us knew that.
Literally as we speak. All he needs to do is say the word.
All he needs to do is reach out on Instagram, DM.
Yeah, I mean, you know, whatever. But no, I enjoy it. I think he's the first musician that I've ever met that I actually wanted to meet.
Yeah,
Got a little nervous?
Yeah,
no
yeah,
offense,
yeah,
no
yeah.
offense, Hawk and Horse.
Well, no, Hawk and Horse doesn't count. He's
I'm
like
just
my
kidding.
friend.
I'm just kidding.
Andrew Wills is my friend. But no, so I was like,
You kind of
Evan.
fangirled.
hey man,
Were you like, can you sign my shirt?
what are you doing? Like,
Sign my
Clay
shirt.
took off
Yeah.
his shirt. It's on my back.
yeah. Anyway,
I do
so
like that.
I've been jamming out to the Turnpike Troubadours
Oh,
a
they're
lot.
great. They're
Oh,
great.
So
Good,
maybe
yeah.
I'll probably write a 4th verse to one
Oh,
of their songs.
Love it. Love it.
don't
Yeah.
do that to Turnpike Troubadours.
They just got the band back together. All right, guys. Well, March 9th, Brent and I
Oh, yeah,
will be
Black
at
Bear.
Black Bear Bonanza.
Hello, I'll be there too.
Josh will be there. Josh Lambridge will be there.
Kyle, you
Bear
coming?
John will
I
be
got
there.
a ticket. I'm going to try to.
Kyle's going to be there.
Gonna try to
Dr. Newcomb probably be there.
I'm betting. I'll just be honest. I'm betting that Shep Newcomb's going to play in the state championship. So
Yeah, we got major problems. If Shep's in the state championship, which we have 4 games to win between here and there.
It's not very many.
Misty basically prophesied 10 years ago that Shep would be the state champion in 2024.
I said that he'd play in the state championship in 2024.
Okay.
You know that she has done a lot of that.
And it
I know
usually
I'm
comes true.
I'm telling Noah about the flood. Yeah, I'm talking about, that it comes to fruition. Very good.
Shep Newcomb hit 9 threes 2 nights ago.
In the regional
balling.
championship,
He
I mean,
was
that's
he
hard.
was in a haze.
Yeah.
It was like watching a wolf catch a bison calf and then just go catch another one for no reason.
Yeah,
They did lose though.
that's all right.
The
Shep did good.
regional
championship.
they lost the regional championship.
Yeah, they've gone pretty far. They were a pretty good little scrappy team.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun to watch.
This was like a bonus segment here.
Yeah.
So all of us will most likely
You don't have to pay extra for this part, folks.
Yeah.
So Misty may not be there. She may be at the state championship, and I may be streaming on my phone the live podcast that we're gonna do. We got a lot planned. We're gonna have some live music. It won't be me, Brent. I'm out.
Okay.
But we got a
You
good.
won't be the musician, is what you're saying?
I won't.
You're gonna be our friend Brent.
I might just step up and take over.
You know you will. I mean, there's no chance you won't.
All right,
Is it
guys.
Alanis Morissette?
Maybe. All right. Thank you, guys. Maui Nui is on a mission to help balance axis deer populations for the good of our environment, communities, and food systems on the island of Maui. They've shared over 126,000 pounds of nutrient-dense protein with the Maui community. Secure your spot now. Become a snack subscriber and join in helping to build more resilient food and ecosystems on Maui. Visit MauiNuiVenison.com. That's MAUINUI venison.com and use promo code BEAR for 20% off your first order. This show is sponsored in part by BetterHelp. Around New Year's, we get obsessed with how to change ourselves instead of just expanding on what we've already done right. Maybe you finally organized one part of your space and you want to tackle another. Or maybe you're taking your supplements every morning and now you actually want to eat breakfast. In the last year, I've been more diligent about going to the gym on a regimented schedule, and it's made a lot of difference in my life. Therapy helps you find your strengths so that you can ditch the extreme resolutions and make changes that really stick. Therapy is helpful for learning positive coping skills and how to set boundaries. It empowers you to be the best version of yourself. It isn't just for those who've experienced major trauma. If you're thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Celebrate the progress you've already made. Visit BetterHelp.com/Grease today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp.com/Grease.